Throughout history, nations across the globe have competed with each other in order to have a better economy and more innovation. And while some succeed in their journey towards becoming a global powerhouse, others are left behind. Others, such as Namibia, are set to the side in a perpetual state of underdevelopment, filled to the brim with corruption, conflict, and dangerously active climates. In this race, which determines a country's place in history, there are only winners and losers. So the question remains, what exactly set the losers apart from the winners? Why are some countries as powerful as China or the US, and why are others as weak as Namibia? In order to answer this question, WS documentaries will take you on a journey through the failures and wonders of Namibia to figure out what exactly and what conditions made this country into what it is known as today. Namibia has been inhabited since prehistoric times by the San, the Amara, and Nama people. However, in the 14th century, the Bantu people, which immigrated towards Namibia, have since then dominated the population of the country. What is now officially known as the Republic of Namibia is a country in southern Africa. Namibia itself also has a few accomplishments, such as gaining independence in 1990 for better or for worse, and also joining the United Nations. However, they are also known for being the driest country in sub-Saharan Africa. Nevertheless, Namibia is also gifted with a vast amount of resources spread all across its land. So why exactly is it placing so low in the ladder of development? The poor governance found within Namibia is without a doubt one of the main reasons why the nation is underdeveloped to this very day. Firstly, the Namibian government has structured the economy in a manner which is not conducive to economic growth and thus halts development. This is because the government frequently intervenes in the economy and does not allow for market forces such as the invisible hand to take their course. This is demonstrated by the fact that the Fraser Institute does not have Namibia within its 100 most economically free nations in the world for 2022, whereas the Heritage Foundation barely does per its 59.2 economic freedom score. The centrally planned and thus unfree market in Namibia does not allow for abundant economic incentives to be in place for the labor force, as increases in economic output may not correlate to proportionally sufficient increases in income when a market lacks freedom. This does not allow for the maximization of the economic productivity of workers in the country. Thus, this negatively impacts economic growth, which has been reflected in Namibia's 2021 GDP per capita of roughly $5,000. Furthermore, the lack of economic incentives which the labor force is provided with is reflected in the labor force participation rate of the nation, which is 28.5% in 2020, far inferior to that of nations with high levels of economic freedom such as Singapore, which has a labor force participation rate of above 70%. Additionally, the high income taxes of Namibia, such as 37% for the top income, demonstrate that the economic distribution of individuals is not fully rewarded to them with income without a high governmental cut of it. Thus, realists will claim that this will not allow for development through economic growth, since humans are greedy and act in self-interest, making Namibians not very economically, as this will not be in their self-interest since it will not always result in great income due to taxation. Nevertheless, some may argue that the lack of economic growth of Namibia, as per its low GDP per capita, is an inaccurate reflection of the wealth of citizens, as purchasing power parity is not adjusted for, and therefore the low prices of goods and services in Namibia is not accounted for. Nonetheless, Namibia's GDP is very low regardless of PPP, as globalization has to an extent homogenized the price of goods and services, meaning that the roughly $5,000 GDP per capita is not of great economic value regardless of location. In conclusion, the poor governance of Namibia, which has not allowed for economic freedom, inhibits development by creating low levels of economic growth. Namibia's scarce development may also be attributed to its high levels of corruption. As per the 2021 Corruption Perception Index, Namibia has a corruption score of 49, which is substantially lower than nations such as Denmark, Singapore, and New Zealand, which all have scores higher than 80 and the development to show for it. Namibia's high levels of corruption have made it extremely hard for the nation to develop because it amplifies underdevelopment by making government officials richer, worsening the Gini coefficient in Namibia, which is 59.1 as of 2021, demonstrating extreme income inequality. Furthermore, corruption in Namibia also inhibits development by worsening the already poor economy by eroding the trust of trade partners and foreign investors, resulting in Namibia's GDP per capita of less than $5,000, which is one of the lowest in the world and 91% lower than that of the average for nations with a CPI value of 80 or above. The detriments of corruption on the economy are further reinforced by the siphoning out of funds from the government budget, worsening the public goods of Namibia, such as its road, which have led to Namibia having the most annual car accidents per capita out of any nation in the world. Furthermore, hope is not plenty for Namibians in regards to the diminishing levels of corruption in their nation, as according to realists, humans are greedy and act in self-interest, which in this instance will lead to government officials always acting in corrupt manners for their economic self-interest. Nevertheless, slight improvements have been made in Namibia with regards to corruption, as their CPI value was far worse only about a decade ago, being as low as 41. This demonstrates that through the lesser governmental involvement in the economy, corruption can be decreased, as Namibia's CPI score has increased nearly in unison with its economic freedom score, according to the Heritage Foundation. The geography of Namibia is another reason for which many argue that it lacks development. This is because Namibia is located in southern Africa, bordering other underdeveloped nations such as Zambia and Botswana. Thus, tropical diseases often plague the nation, leading to humanitarian crises as reflected by Namibia's life expectancy of only 63 years, 20 years lower than that of other nations such as Japan and Spain. Additionally, due to its latitude of roughly 23 degrees, it is close to the equator, leading to extremely warm temperatures, which make it hard for productive agriculture to occur, which is a means of economic livelihood for a large portion of Namibians, as being in the global south, Namibia has an agrarian economy. During the summer, the average temperature in Namibia surpasses 24 Celsius and has even reached 45.5 Celsius in Gobabeb. Furthermore, the agrarian economy of Namibia is also negatively affected by the long dry season which occurs in Namibia from May to October, often leading to extreme droughts nationwide, which make agricultural production extremely difficult and thus unproductive. However, some may argue that the geography of Namibia is not a valid excuse for its low levels of development, since there are many countries which share a similar latitude to that of Namibia, such as Australia and New Zealand, both of which have HDI values superior to 0.9, a value which Namibia can only dream of one day surpassing. This demonstrates that regardless of Namibia's disadvantageous geography, it can still achieve high levels of development through the principles of the global north, such as, but not limited to, manufacturing and technology-based economies and high levels of female empowerment. This is because if Namibia was to adopt a manufacturing and technology-based economy rather than an agrarian one, it would avoid the detrimental economic productivity with its high temperatures and dry season have. Thus, the argument that Namibia cannot escape its low levels of development simply because of its position on the map is flawed and incorrect. We now exit our journey through Namibia and the reasons why it has not achieved development. We must now ask ourselves how can this be solved in order to help other countries such as Namibia to be lifted out of their perpetual state of underdevelopment. One angle in which we could tackle this is through the global North and South divide. The North and South divide is a concept which separates our globe into two sides, the countries in the Northern Hemisphere and the countries in the Southern Hemisphere. This concept states that countries in the North will adopt characteristics such as high levels of women empowerment, low birth and death rates, and manufacturing-based economies, hence making them developed. On the other hand, countries in the global South are known to adopt the opposite, low levels of women empowerment, high birth and death rates, and agrarian-based economies. Coincidentally, Namibia is in the Southern Hemisphere, so in order to help them, they should adopt characteristics of the global North. This can be done through increasing political representation of the countries in the South within the North. Through this, countries such as Namibia will be more involved into global political affairs which they might benefit from. Empowering women within Namibia is also a great idea, as opening to education will increase their human capital, which is in many ways helpful and important to the development of a nation. Finally, the North could also aid countries in the South, such as Namibia, through giving them technology and educating them on it, so their economy is able to grow at a faster rate than ever before. As previously mentioned, it can be quite difficult for citizens in Namibia to access their most basic necessities. It is estimated that the rate of absolute poverty in Namibia is 43.3%, which represents nearly half of the Namibian population that is not able to meet their physiological needs. This results in human rights violations as individuals aren't able to access the human right to an adequate standard of living, such as access to food and housing, which is Article 25 of the UDHR, which also may lead to the right to life being breached, which is found in the 4th article of the UDHR. It is therefore of utmost importance to support those who are suffering from such inhumane conditions in Namibia. Thus, we encourage anyone and everyone who can to donate to NGOs in Namibia.